Today on Rainbow Country, the Awesome Music Project Canada. Stay tuned. The Gay Talk Radio Toronto style right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, I'm Garrett Conley, author of Boy Erased, a memoir. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on CIUT 89.5 FM.
Well, hello everyone and welcome to Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm Mark Tara. So, do you have an interesting story to share? Maybe you have an upcoming project and you want to get maybe some free airtime? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Well, get in touch and I will put you on the show. Socials at Mark Tara Music. If you want to send me an email, mark@marktara.com. Get in touch. I will have you on the show. Synonyms, Critics' Pick, and winner of Best Picture at the 2019 Berlin Film Festival. Opening in Toronto at the TIFF Bell Lightbox Friday, November the 1st. Synonyms, directed by Nadav Lapid, is about a young Israeli man who moves to Paris with great expectations that France will save him from what he sees as the madness of his country. I was fortunate enough during TIFF 2019 to do an interview with the director, Nadav Lapid. You can find that at marktara.com under the archives banner. Again, Synonyms, opening in Toronto, Friday, November 1st, TIFF Bell Lightbox. Discover your next favorite artist. Indie Week runs November 13th to the 17th, featuring over 150 artists from 18 countries across 25 venues. Tickets and passes are on sale now. Here's what you can look forward to. About 10,000 plus attendees, artist showcases, Indie Week Awards show, but wait, there's more. 65 plus speakers, Health and Wellness Day, Tech Day, demo listening sessions, industry panels, mentorships. Indie Week, a 5-day musical festival and industry conference, runs November 13th to the 17th. For more information, indieweek.com. So my friends, this is episode 174. Today, the Awesome Music Project Canada, a new book from authors Terry Stuart and Robert Carley. A couple weeks ago, I caught up with co-author Terry Stuart to talk about his book and what sparked it. That interview, up next.
Hours go shorter as the days go by. We never get to stop and open our eyes. 1 minute you're waiting for the sky to fall, and next you're dazzled by the beauty of it all. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time. These fragile bodies of touch and taste. This fragrant skin, this hair like lace. Spirits open to a thrust of grace. Never a breath you can afford to waste. Lovers in a dangerous time. 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 Sometimes you're made to feel as if your love's a crime. Nothing worth having comes without some kind of fight. Gotta kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time.
He is the co-author behind the new #1 book, The Awesome Music Project Canada, Songs of Hope and Happiness. Plus, he is the CIO, Chief Innovation Officer for Deloitte Canada. He is Terry Stuart. Hi.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you. I'm great.
Good. I always say this, but I'm going to say to you in person, thank you for taking your time to be here with me.
It's my pleasure.
Okay. The Awesome Music Project Canada, Songs of Hope and Happiness. Quite the title. First of all, how did you guys settle on that title?
We actually had a lot of debate. Robert Carley and I are co-authors of this, co-curators really, because it's 111 stories by other people. I had come up with the Awesome Music Project, and Rob really hated the name. Didn't think it was serious enough, to be honest, about the topic that we're dealing with music and mental health. And so we went out and did some testing and talked to a bunch of friends and said, okay, no name on it. Here's the book. Look at the stories, read the stories. And everybody came back and said, oh my God, that's awesome. So ultimately, Rob gave in to the naming convention, and it does actually stick now. People, when you say it's the Awesome Music Project, they're starting to remember it. You can see the logo on my hat. It's got a nice little short tag of AMP.
AMP,
and you can amplify. So it was a lot of debate, but that's where we are now.
So Robert Carley is your co-author, and you guys put together this beautiful hardcover book, a book with a purpose, I would say, released October 10th, #1 on Amazon.ca for music, #20 for happiness in the happiness category, and overall top 100 on Amazon.ca and all 5-star reviews. Congrats on that.
Thanks. We're super excited.
How does that make you feel?
It's a bit surreal, to be honest, because this was a bit of a passion project for both of us. Wanted to really explore the healing power of music and how it could help solve mental health challenges, but really cathartically just do a project that told a lot of happy and hopeful stories. And the fact that it made #1 on the Amazon listings on the first day was pretty exciting and extra special because it was World Mental Health Day at the same time. So sometimes good things happen to good people, I guess.
How did this book come about?
So the book is 111 stories about songs that make people happy and hopeful. And it's really a music book, but it has all kinds of wonderful stories. And we sprinkled a little bit of science in. So at the end, it's got 4 chapters. And at the end of every chapter, there's an article by a neuroscientist or a music therapist or a psychologist talking about what's really going on in your brain when you're listening to music. So we wanted people to read, super interesting stories about songs that make them happy, but we also wanted them to learn a little bit about how amazing music is for our mental health through the journey.
And from beginning to end, how long did this book take to come to fruition? How long did it take?
Yeah, the serious conceptualization was about 18 months ago. And so, and then I think I talked to Rob about 6 months after that, or into the journey, and off we went together on the idea of creating this. And it's been an amazing ride, and we couldn't have done it that fast without some awesome collaborators. So Page 2 Publishing out of Vancouver are the people that helped put together this beautiful book. So they connected us with a writer to help capture the stories for people that weren't writers. They had one of the people on their staff, Peter Cocking, that is an amazing illustrator. And he said, Terry, you've got amazing stories in here. You have to make it visually compelling or people aren't going to actually read the stories. And so I have a lot of gratitude for Peter, because the beautiful book that you see is a result of him and his design working with Page 2. So this went that quickly because it was a collaboration of multiple people with diverse skills.
Was there a flashpoint? Was there a moment that sparked this book?
Yeah, I'd had a number of friends that had issues with mental health in their families or personally. One couple, Eric Windler and Sandra Hannington, their son Jack died of suicide about 10 years ago. And they were good friends from work, and I realized how serious this topic was. They both quit their jobs and created something called the Jack Project, jack.org. And jack.org is an amazing organization that actually help educate high school students and university students on how to become mental health advocates and suicide prevention advocates. So that was, in my mind that mental health was something. I'd personally gone through anxiety and depression all the way to being diagnosed and having, prescription antidepressants. And then I had an individual very close to me who'd actually gotten all the way to writing a suicide note. And it was something that was to your point, like that was the galvanizing moment where I said, holy cow, let's dig into this. And as I looked at it, they had anxiety, they had not clinical depression, but a number of things had happened, and they ultimately had been prescribed antidepressants from their doctor without the discussion of the efficacy rate of the antidepressants, without the mention that one of the big side effects of antidepressants is suicidal thoughts. So I started digging into it and thinking, for me, when I get anxious or depressed, music has always been the thing that pulled me out, whether it was playing music back in high school, DJing, going to concerts. I love going to see live music. And it was always the thing that brought me through it. And I looked at some of the other friends that I had and family members that had had challenges, and music was always the healing power. So the question then immediately came, why are we not prescribing music therapy for people with depression? And the simple answer to that, as I did the research, is because we don't yet have the clinical evidence. So part of the book is to create something that's happy and joyful so that we're not spending all the time thinking about Trump or Brexit or our Canadian election or any of the other stressful things. We're thinking about great stories and songs. And then we're raising money, fundamental money for research so that we can prove, hopefully, that music therapy actually has a healing power for anxiety and depression. We know qualitatively, all of the research suggests that it's super helpful, but we don't have the clinical evidence. So that's what we're going to try and go and address in the science.
Robert Carley is your co-author on this book. How did you guys meet?
Well, it's funny. You'll see in the book there are a lot of little Easter eggs through the book. You'll see the Burnside brothers. We both lived on Burnside Drive, so we're neighbors actually first and foremost. I was telling Rob the story of I was thinking about, are there songs that make you ultimately happy? Like, is there a universal happy song? And he said, Terry, there's no such thing as a universal happy song. So we had debates. There might have been beer involved, or other, substances. But as we go through it, we're talking about, how does music actually impact people? And I started to talk to him about the idea of the book and capturing a bunch of songs that make people happy. And he said, Terry, I would love to lean in on this. And he truly became a co-founder and partner in the journey. And Rob's a Gemini award-winning music writer, producer, world-class saxophonist. He's done all of the 14 seasons of Murdoch Mysteries. He has performed live with the Toronto Symphony, with Danny Michel, with Chris Hadfield, the Bare Naked Ladies. So he is the music guy. I am the idea guy, and thinking about how do we use this to try and disrupt or shake up, some of the world of mental health.
So the Awesome Music Project Canada features Canadians from all walks of life, including well-renowned artists like Sarah McLachlan, Rick Mercer, Chris Hadfield, Michael Bublé, Leona Boyd. Love her. How did you guys decide who you would reach out to initially?
We, it was a function of our individual networks. So Rob has a fantastic network in the music industry. I have one in the corporate industry and across the country. And then Page Two and their network have a group of people. We started very early in the discussion knowing that we wanted some musicians and people from the music industry, but we didn't want this to be a music industry book, like only artists and musicians. We wanted it to be something that appealed to everybody, anybody and everybody. And we quickly said, okay, what if we tried to have the goal of this being a book that represents the entire mosaic of Canada? So in the 111 stories, we have 31 approximately that are famous people, and you mentioned a bunch of them that most Canadians would recognize. But we have people from every single province and territory. We have people from the LGBTQ plus community. We have people from the Indigenous community. We have an 8-year-old girl and a 100-year-old in the book. So the goal was that 95+% of Canadians would look at the book and they would find someone in the book that they would resonate with and say, hey, that's kind of like me. And look at that. Oh, they went through a tough time and music pulled them out. That's pretty cool. Maybe I should listen to some more music. So it was, at risk in today's diverse community, at risk of Terry and Rob, 2 white older guys from Toronto, right? Like that was the risk. If we only pulled our network, we would not have the diversity that we have in the book, which I'm very proud of, the kind of stories that are there. And hopefully, and so far the feedback has been very positive that lots and lots of different people love the book and people that we wouldn't have expected otherwise. So,
any stories that stand out to you in particular?
There are some major moving stories, and I think the one that we just had performed at the Gladstone at our book launch event last week is one of the more poignant ones. Shaker Goatee is a lieutenant commander in the Special Armed Forces for Canada, and he was stationed in Haiti doing relief work down there. And he was in a hotel, and the hotel collapsed. The building collapsed, and he was buried alive for 24 hours. And he basically thought he was dead. And he kept hearing in his mind, okay, if I just stay conscious, if I can stay conscious, maybe, just maybe, I'll get to see my wife and kids again. And a lot of courage, a lot of strength, inner strength, and he's in the armed forces, so I guess he's got a lot of inner strength and focus. But he kept hearing an old Bruce Cockburn song, and Bruce just played yesterday, I think, at Kerner Hall here. Canadian iconic songwriter, and the song was "Lovers in a Dangerous Time," and the lyric that he kept hearing was "Kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight."
Nothing worth having comes without some kind of fight. Gotta kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. Lovers in a dangerous
And so you think about it, he's buried alive underneath all of this rubble, and he's thinking, okay, if I can just kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight when people start taking the rubble off of me, maybe I will be able to survive. What's interesting is when you talk to him about the story, he wasn't hearing Bruce Cockburn. He was hearing the Bare Naked Ladies cover of it. He could physically hear Ed Robertson hear it. And this is the kind of stuff that this project is doing. So when we had our launch party at the Gladstone last week, Shaker came in full dress military gear. He told his story about, the collapse of the building and being buried alive, et cetera. And then Ed Robertson and Jim Cregan from the Bare Naked Ladies came and performed it. And that was amazing. There are many wonderful stories in the book, and people, what was interesting for us is people got super personal. Like they got into family members dying and what they went through at the time. Amanda Lang's story about her sister passing away, and then she and her other sisters, sitting on their floor and playing albums that her sister wanted them to hear. Super personal stories. People coming out as gay and the songs that they listened to actually give them the strength, in that environment. And so some phenomenal stories, that get very, very personal and, deep for people. So I was surprised, and we didn't ask for that. We just asked for a story that made them happy and hopeful, and these were the stories that came forward. So I think they were stories that needed to be told or wanted to be told.
Terry Stuart, powerful. On that note, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators' backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
Hi, I'm Gord Depp of the Spoons. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on CIUT 89.5 FM.
So Terry Stuart, you are the CIO, Chief Innovation Officer for Deloitte Canada. First of all, Deloitte Canada. What is Deloitte Canada? What does that do?
Deloitte's one of Canada's largest professional services firms. So everything from consulting through audit and tax and risk and advisory and financial advisory services. So a management consulting and advisory business that also has audit and tax roots.
And you are the CIO, Chief Innovation Officer. What does that mean? What does that mean?
So my job is really twofold. Help a 157-year-old company think about what new services and new capabilities we should have. So innovating Deloitte internally. And then also helping our clients think about how do they put in innovative capabilities and sustainable practices. So innovation is one of those buzzwords now that's used everywhere, and I think I may have to change my title shortly because of that. But how do you get new products, new services out to the market in an era when we have things being 3D printed that could never have been printed before, when we have artificial intelligence doing things that humans used to do, and now we can do it in an automated fashion and do it better with technology. So helping our teams and our clients understand the technologies, understand the new business models, so that they can disrupt themselves instead of being disrupted by somebody else. So everybody wants to be the Netflix, not the Blockbuster. So that's kind of my job for us as well as for our clients.
And you've been doing this for 25 years, like helping your clients solve business problems?
I thought we weren't going to talk about how old I am. But I have been doing consulting for going on sneaking up on 30 years actually now.
And so the question is, how does a successful businessman co-author a #1 music book? How does that happen?
Yeah, many people have said, Terry, how the heck is your name on the front of this book? So the concept was my idea. Rob has been a co-collaborator from day one through the entire journey. And what we said, neither of us, so Rob's a professional musician and music writer and producer, and I'm a management consulting partner at one of Canada's largest professional services firms. So what we said is, how do we get the best people to help us do this? Mm-hmm. And I had contacted 4 different individuals, some in the U.S. and some here in Canada, that had written books and had stuff published that I really liked. And all of them said, well, you have to come across this company called Page 2 out of Vancouver. And we already had an idea that we wanted the book to be heavily Canadian centric, both the content of it as well as how it got published. Mm-hmm. So off we went and we met with Jesse and the team, Jesse Finkelstein at Page 2, and they were amazing. And they had the right kind of dynamic. They really grabbed a hold of the concept and said, we want to help you guys with this. And away we went. And then they connected us into writers, into artists, and all of that. So outsource would be the quick answer to that question.
Would you say that you're more, say, for lack of better words or phrases, you're the business side of things?
Yeah, the creative concept was definitely mine, and then Rob brought a bunch of the musicality to it, and then the whole science of how do you publish a book was Jessie and her team, her expert team at Page 2. Do
you have a music background?
I have a passion for music. So
you don't play any instruments? You didn't?
Well, no, I played piano when I was a kid, and then clarinet in high school, and then I was a DJ. I went to school overseas to the United World College of the Atlantic in Wales for grade 12 and 13, and I was a DJ over there. I received a saxophone for my 35th birthday. I have not become proficient in that yet, but that is my next task, is to take on the saxophone. And I'm hoping that when Rob gets some spare time here, Christian will give me some lessons. But, so I've always had a passion for music. So as opposed to being someone who, performed, a lot on that. But Rob is clearly the deep music person underneath it.
Living in the age of disruption, you helped coin this phrase?
Yeah, the World Economic Forum would call the time that we're living in the 4th Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. So we've gone through multiple industrial revolutions previously. Things are changing so quickly, whether it's the advancements of technology or new business models or new capabilities and innovation. So this is a very disruptive time. There are companies that, were thriving that are no longer around. There are people that had jobs that no longer have jobs because some of the technologies are taking over or transforming their jobs. There are brand new companies, more exciting companies that are starting and going to $1 billion valuation from nowhere because of the advances in technology. So the age of disruption is really just to help people understand that we're living in a time where if it feels a little bit stressful, it feels like the change is coming quick and furious, it's because it is. And it's no longer that only one technology impacts you. We now have IoT, or the Internet of Things, like wearable devices and tracking, and cars that can be autonomous and drive by themselves, or almost to that level. So all of these things are starting to compound, and that's why we're calling it the age of disruption. So, and it's not to scare people, because we don't believe that the fear, uncertainty, and doubt strategy works. But some of the research that Deloitte has done actually on Canada, we are falling behind on the productivity and innovation agenda. So part of this is to try and wake people up, wake corporate Canada up. Mm-hmm. And disruption is one of those words that does conjure up a need for action.
So neurological research confirms that music is good for us. Do you think that your book, The Awesome Music Project, could potentially be considered a disruptor? And by this, I mean by how we perceive music and the impact on the listener.
I'm super hopeful that it's a constructive disruptor, so that it actually helps illuminate the healing power of music for people, both in performing music, listening to music, going and seeing live music. But the first piece of research we're going to do is with a group of people with clinical depression and actually see if clinical-based music therapy can actually change the brain chemistry. That's just one of many different types of research that we want to do. We want to get deeper into research of when you and I go to see a concert together, why is it that we feel better coming out of that concert than if we were both sitting in my living room listening to the exact same songs? So the social aspect of going and seeing a live performance is there. So there's a whole bunch of different aspects of the healing power of music that we want to look into. I think it's very strange with all of the different mechanisms that we have today that our medical profession really only has one solution to somebody that presents as having anxiety or clinical depression: antidepressants. We have one answer today. And so what we're trying to do is hopefully dig underneath that and prove that there are other answers. And we're not saying, by the way, that antidepressants are the wrong thing. We're just saying it's a bit strange that it's the only thing. And so if we call it a disruption, if we call it a catalyst, I'm hoping that this actually can help us get to the point where we have proven clinical science behind this, so that then we can go to the government, to the insurance companies and others, say, we now know, not just through the qualitative evidence, but through clinical protocol-based evidence, that this is actually moving the dial on brain chemistry and has a lot of other positive effects. If you're doing music therapy, you're interacting with someone, you're not just going home and taking pills. So there's a lot of other different aspects to it.
Why do you think there really hasn't been that push for the science behind music and the healing powers?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because if you talk to people music therapy has been around for a number of decades, so it's not a brand new thing, although it's getting much more sophisticated now. We are at an interesting time, and I'll lean on the technology a little bit. We're at an interesting time now where we can, for a few $100s, put an EEG on your skull, an electroencephalogram, and actually measure your brain waves. And so we're at a time when the access to the technology to instrument and understand is much less expensive, and that's one of the exciting parts of the age of disruption, as we called it, is those technologies are moving on an exponential curve. So they're getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And now we can apply something that would have been $500,000, 10 years ago. We can actually do it for a $1,000 experiment. So I think that the ability, the cost of the technologies is one. I think when you get into doing clinical protocol based, like we don't want to be prescribing things that we're not sure if they work or not. So there's a lot of robust processes that need to go into a clinical trial. The selection of the individuals, how you run the trial, making sure that you have placebos or examples where you're not applying it and you see if the results are the same or not. So lots of different costs that go into that, and I think that's a piece of the puzzle. And that's why all of the proceeds from the book are going to fund our first piece of research at CAMH. So we have to raise just short of $1 million to go do that. And that's one of the inhibitors, having enough money to fund it. There have been lots of other things that needed clinical trial funding, and this one's one that we're going to go tackle.
The science that's in the book, did those scientists and their research, did that come from the publisher?
No, what we did when I went, I was kind of on a mission to look at how music was being used for mental health. Looked across the country and said, are there charities, if I want to take the proceeds from the book and apply them to a charity, which one would I apply it to? And we looked at some amazing programs. So there's a program out of British Columbia called Music Heals. Fantastic program. It raises money for people to learn music therapy, so to become a music therapist, or if you can't afford music therapy but you need it, it actually helps provide the funding to receive music therapy. So that was a pretty cool one. We went across the country, and more people said, you need to be talking to, you want to do a breakthrough on music and mental health and anxiety and depression. You want to be talking to the guys at CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health here in Toronto. And it's a world-renowned center for addiction and mental health. I went and talked to them and said, okay, if I could raise $500,000, $1 million, is there some interesting research on music and mental health that you think we could do? And they said, oh my goodness, we have several doctors that have been thinking about this. So they have a world-class team of neuroscientists that they've lured to Toronto from Boston, from San Francisco, from Germany and other cities. They have in fact got 50% of the worldwide patents on neurotracers are at CAMH. Neurotracers are when you take in a radioactive substance and it's engineered to attach to a protein in your brain. So as I started to look at the things that we would need to do, this group of 3 people led by Dr. Jeff Meyer and Neil Vazdev, and then Dr. Michael Tote from University of Toronto is the 4th collaborator in the mix. And Michael is an interesting combination. So he has a PhD in neuroscience and is a worldwide renowned classical violinist. And he runs the as a chair in the Department of Music and Life Sciences at U of T. So the universities are starting to understand this linkage between music and our bodies and our health. So anyway, the group of 4 said, here's a project that we would love to do, but it hasn't quite gotten to the top of the funding scheme yet. I said, all right, that's my job. I'm going to go with the book, with our live event series that we'll talk about. We're going to go raise the funds to go do that work.
Well said. Well said. Terry Stuart, on that note, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on CIUT 895 FM, discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. And of course our artists and the things that we do globally and right here in Toronto, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm recording artist Corey Stewart, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on CIUT 89.5 FM.
So, Terry Stuart, if I go to, say, 2 concerts a month, what happens to me? Do I live longer? Is that a scientific fact? Something that scientists are looking into?
Yeah, we're into early days on this, but there's some great research that's just come out of both Australia and the United Kingdom with over 1,000 participants in it. And they found that people that did, and the magic number appears to be 2 concerts a month. I'm not sure why it's 2 concerts a month, but that's the number, and that's my goal personally for 2019 is 2 concerts a month. But that they lived over 10 years longer. In one study it was 10 years, in one study it was between 5 and 10. So what we think is happening, and I think what they're digging into is causation versus correlation, right? So is it that happier people go to concerts and therefore, that's a correlation, right? Or I'm sad and depressed, I go to a concert, I'm happier, and that's a causation, right? So that's kind of what they're digging into. But there is clearly a social aspect. You go to a concert to see a band, even if you go by yourself to the concert, you're there in your enveloped in all the positivity, generally, depending on the band, obviously, and what's being performed. So I think we're going to see a lot more about that, and hopefully that means the continued swell in live concerts continues, and that's very important for the artists. It's very important for us as a society, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's a difference between going to see like a concert from a big name band, like say Fleetwood Mac, as opposed to going to a bar and listening to some local musicians that are playing, that have a band, that are on stage? Do you think that it matters?
I don't have any data or science to back that one up, but I think both have massive merits to them. And I'm just thinking I've averaged 4.5 concerts a month this year, getting pretty focused on it. And it's probably, if I reflect, it's probably about 50-50. I've seen some very big concerts like Elton John coming back through. But I was down at South by Southwest in March with a group of people from Toronto, and I saw 18 bands, and generally they were in, 50 to 150 person venues. Right. The venue that we had last week for the Gladstone was an amazing one, small, tight, 200 people. So I think both of those kinds of events are beneficial for people. I do think the large venues, the Scotiabank Arenas, et cetera, of the world, those ones have a lot of pros, but they also, depending on the person, can be overwhelming, right? Like if you're somebody who has claustrophobia or social anxiety, like that might be challenging, where some of the smaller venues might be more approachable. So I think there's not a one size is the perfect size. I think it's, find the right venue, the right bands, and the things that work for you.
You have an event coming up in November?
We do. We're starting an event series across the country, and their theme is stories, songs, and science. So someone telling a story from the book or beyond the book, because we're starting to capture the next book and other stories. So someone telling the story, someone performing, an artist performing the song that they're talking about, and then a scientist talking a little bit about, why does our toe start tapping when we listen to music? So Gabe Nespoli, as an example, is a neuroscience that's going to talk about that. So November 1st at the museum in Kitchener-Waterloo is going to be a fantastic event, and it's being done in collaboration with the Grand River Hospital Foundation. They launched a music therapy program for youth last year, and it exploded, and it's been super successful, and they want to expand on that program and have a full-time music therapist for adults. So we're going to raise some money for them, some money for the research that we need to do. And we've got an amazing set of artists. So Dan Hill is coming, Sometimes When We Touch. Remember that?
I love that song.
Danny Michelle, Sarah Sleen, and we've got folks in the book like Nino Ricci are going to be there, Gabe Nespoli. So it's going to be a fantastic, fantastic event. November 1st, which is a Friday night, going to blow out the doors of the museum.
In Kitchener.
In Kitchener-Waterloo. Worth the drive from Toronto, for those of your listeners that happen to be in Toronto.
I think you just mentioned a series. So are these going to be rolling out over time?
Yeah, that's our goal. Like in the book, we have people from communities all across the country. And as we started, and this is maybe an interesting part of the journey, we started with, let's just do a book and we'll give CAMH some money for some research. As we went through that, everybody we talked to, whether they were individuals or artists, said, Terry and Rob, like, you realize you're onto something that's really, really important here. Like, this is lightning in a bottle. You can't just do a book and give CAMH some money. So we realized that what we were really trying to create was a movement. So trying to create a movement that says, hey, we can address mental health with the healing power of music and in a more fundamental way that is actually science-based. So that's kind of what we've created. That's why we've created a full not-for-profit, the Awesome Music Project. And every artist that we talked to said, Terry, like, you had me at music. I'll give you a story for the book. No problem. But don't you need money? And we said, well, yeah, we need money, but we weren't going to approach you for the money. We're going to sell the book. And he said, yeah, but what if I did a concert? So Theo Fleury, hockey player Theo Fleury, he has a band in Calgary. So Theo said, what if I did a concert in Calgary? And, some of my friends had come out, like, I'm sure, Jan had come out and a few other people. And I said, hold on, just wait a sec. When you say Jan, do you mean Jan Arden? Yeah, Jan. so Theo is gonna help us, and we haven't booked the dates yet, but for the ones past the Kitchener-Waterloo one, because getting the book out and getting our launch day and then getting Kitchener-Waterloo has been reasonably full-time consuming for Rob and I. But we're starting to look at Vancouver, at Calgary, at Ottawa, at Montreal, at the East Coast. Alan Doyle's in the book. We got to do something big with Great Big Sea out in on the East Coast, and then hit some Indigenous communities across the country. So, and the idea would be, and people should feel free to reach out to us, but the idea would be every single one of those concerts is a collaboration with a local charity. So there's a charity that is doing something with music therapy and mental health, or music and mental health, and away we go. So that's the idea. We don't know how quickly, and it'll be, time and passion and energy, determining, but, that's kind of the goal.
That's fantastic. So how does that make you feel in regards to coming up with this concept and this idea? Because essentially this idea came from yourself, you were saying, and now it's starting to be a movement. How does that make you feel personally?
It feels pretty good, but I feel, interestingly, like I'm super excited about the book, and the response from everybody has been amazing. But it feels now like at one point the book was the job, the goal, yeah. Right? Now it feels like we've barely just started. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to create the movement across Canada. And you can hear, the stories and the different events that we want to do, and all of those are going to have a lot of work to be done. We've already been approached by other countries to look at doing something in Australia or something in Israel or something in the Netherlands or the UK or the US. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about a movement, like I think about Movember, for example. Mm-hmm. So a few Australian guys got together and said, why are guys still dying of prostate cancer while they're young? And they just did a charity event, a goofy grow a mustache thing in November. And then suddenly that went viral and went around the world. So if we could do for music and mental health what Movember did for men and prostate cancer, how amazing would that be? Mm-hmm. So I feel elated at the success of the book, but I also feel a little bit of weight and responsibility to try and take this and have the kind of impact that it needs to have. Because the book is nice, but we haven't actually raised the $1 million for the research at CAMH yet, right? So we have to go and do that, get the research started, and then hopefully start to change the policies and the strategies. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is actually about, is changing how our society deals with mental health using music as a healing power. So having a book is nice, but it's a means to an end. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that this is the book. Is there a second book in the works?
Well, Rob keeps telling me, like, let's make sure the first one is out and we've sold all our copies and so on. But they're going pretty well. Costco just ordered another full allotment. So if you are near a Costco, go and check out Costco for the book. There are a couple of ones in concept, I will say. So we have some sports people in the book. So Theo Fleury as an example, Jordan Eberle, NHL #1 draft pick, Jennifer Heil, amazing Canadian Olympian, gold medal, award-winning skier. But it's not heavy on sports. As we went through, there were a ton of athletes. We talked to folks from MLSE. We talked to folks from a number of NBA teams. We talked to folks from esports. They all have stories about music that makes them happy and hopeful and gets them fired up for games and events. So I think there's going to be an Awesome Music Project Sports Edition. I think there's and it'll be a global one. So we'll have cricketers and we'll have Formula One race car drivers and all of that kind of stuff. At least this is the Crazy Terry concept. And then we had a bunch of CEOs and heads of boards that wanted to have their story in the book. Canadian companies that you would know the names of. And we said we don't want this to become a corporate marketing exercise. So for this one, like let's keep it low. So we don't really have any of the CEOs that had approached me, or that we'd had discussions with. So I think there's going to be a corporate Titans edition, which could be just all senior people that you go, oh, that person likes, whatever, Doug and the Slugs. Really? That's crazy. So a couple of those are in the mix. And then think about how do we take this to other countries? So this is the Awesome Music Project Canada. There could be Awesome Music Project UK, et cetera.
Right. Brilliant. I didn't clue into that fact that it can then you swap out Canada for the U.S. or Australia.
Yeah, we're trying to create a playbook, right? A model that you could take to any other country.
When you were coming up with the title, did you have that in mind?
It was there early because we had a bunch of people. I sit on our global innovation executive, and I, would over a cocktail or two be talking about some of the things I'm doing in my spare time with some of my colleagues from around the world. And they're like, "Oh my God, I want to bring this to Spain, or I want to do this here." So the idea started germinating. But one of the challenges with driving philanthropy is if you try and do too much too quickly, it can all fizzle out and you don't have the kind of impact. So we want to do it and do it right here in our home and true and native land of Canada, and then take it elsewhere. But really do it well in Canada so it has an impact. Because again, it's about changing how we think about mental health through the healing power of music. That's the goal, as opposed to how many books we sell.
So if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about the book, how can they do that?
Yeah, so our website is www.theawesomemusicproject.com. And on the website, you can buy the book, and we link to chapters in Indigo and Amazon on there. You can join our mailing list, and you can put notes in that. So you can join the mailing list because we will have emailing list. We're going to be coming up with a podcast. So we're breaking up the book and all of the other stories. We have another 150 stories that aren't in the book that are amazing that, will be either on the podcast or on the website or in a subsequent book. And they can also donate because we have to raise some money along the way. So that's probably the best way right now.
Fantastic. Terry Stuart, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for being here, and well done. Number 1.
My pleasure.
Slam the passenger side. Father watched you from the yard with his knuckles wrapped in ice. Now the screen door's still broken since you kicked your Kodiaks through it. While we left the Christmas tree standing in case you turned around. Now I've heard you've got a good job that you hate out in Salmon Arm. Maybe I'll hike there from the coast when the weather starts to warm. Katie called on the weekend. She was crying on the telephone. Father said as far as he's concerned, you've been stricken from our home. Sometimes choices aren't so like a soldier. He put his fist through the kitchen door. When I said it would have been better if you had split on your own accord. I don't care about the damage, but I wish you were there to see it. When I scored a hat trick on the team that called you a fucking queer. Choices aren't so.
Hey, this is Michelle Tracy. I'm a singer-songwriter, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on CIUT 89.5 FM.
evening of stories, songs, and signs featuring, among others, Dan Hill. Sometimes When We Touch, love that song. November 1st, the museum in Kitchener, 10 King Street West, Kitchener. For more information, the Awesome Music Project Canada.com. Don't forget, get social, get interactive on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Mark Tara Music. The podcast for Rainbow Country is on iTunes, Podomatic.com, Google Play Music, Stitcher Radio, and on Spotify. So, get Rainbow Country wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And of course, everything is hooked up at my website, marktara.com. Next week, gender identity. Finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we live in days of making dreams come true. So believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Mayor John Tory, and you're listening to CIUT 89.5 FM.